That engine did not die, the man in the faded work jacket said quietly. Somebody taught it how to stop breathing. The words landed in the glass-walled showroom of Heartfelt Motors like a wrench dropped on marble. For 6 hours, the best technicians in Indianapolis had circled the Orion X, a $3 million hybrid prototype built to save the company's future. Its hood stood open beneath white showroom lights. Red warnings pulsed across the dashboard. Investors whispered near the coffee bar. Salesmen checked their watches. And on the polished floor, under a banner that read "Tomorrow starts here," tomorrow had gone completely silent. Grant Whitaker, the gray-haired chief engineer, removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "The engine is gone," he said. "We can replace modules, but not before morning." Derek Sloan, the dealership's general manager, turned red in the face. "That is not an answer, Grant. The CEO lands in 20 minutes. We have press at 9. We have investors upstairs. Fix it." "We tried," Grant said. "Then try harder." The room tightened. Outside, November rain tapped the showroom windows in thin silver lines. Inside, the air smelled of warm circuitry, floor polish, and fear dressed up as professionalism. That was when Caleb Mercer stepped through the side entrance carrying a cardboard box of backordered fuel pressure sensors. He was not wearing a suit. He had no visitor badge worth noticing. His boots were wet, his hands were rough, and there was a faint streak of oil along his wrist that no sink had ever fully forgiven. To most people there, he was just the single dad from the towing yard who delivered parts after closing. He set the box on the counter and paused when the engine gave one weak shudder, not loud, not dramatic, just a tired metallic cough beneath the hood. Caleb turned his head slightly. He listened the way some men listen to a hymn, or a child breathing in the next room. Derek saw him standing there and snapped, "Delivery's done. You can go." A few employees chuckled, relieved to laugh at someone smaller than the problem. Caleb did not answer at first. He stepped closer, eyes on the engine bay, then on the thin tremor moving through a cup of black coffee sitting on the workbench. "It is not dead," he said. "It is being starved at the wrong moment." Derek laughed harder. "Wonderful. The towyard mechanic has diagnosed our prototype by staring at coffee." Caleb looked at him with no anger, only a calm that made the insult feel childish. "No," he said. "By listening." The elevator doors opened behind them. Evelyn Hartwell, CEO of Heartfelt Motors, stepped out in a charcoal coat, her expression sharp enough to cut through excuses. She had heard the last sentence. The room went still. Derek straightened. Grant lowered his eyes. Caleb remained where he was, quiet, steady, almost invisible beneath the bright expensive lights. Evelyn looked at the dying prototype, then at the man everyone had dismissed. "Say that again," she said. "What did you hear in my engine?" Caleb did not answer Evelyn right away. He was still looking at the engine, not with the excitement of a man trying to impress a room, but with the patience of a father listening for a fever in the dark. "The fuel rhythm is late," he said at last. "Not by much. Maybe half a second under load. But enough to make the system fight itself." Derek folded his arms. "That is a beautiful guess." "It is not a guess," Caleb replied. It coughed twice before the shutdown. The second cough came after the injector pulse, not before it. Grant Whitaker looked up then, just slightly. Evelyn noticed. So did Derek, and that made him speak louder. "Miss Hartwell, with respect, this man delivers parts from a tow yard. He is not cleared for prototype diagnostics." The words should have embarrassed Caleb, but they did not. Men like Derek had been speaking around him for years, as if poverty made a person quieter by law. Caleb simply wiped one hand on the side of his faded jacket and stepped back from the car. "Then do not clear me," he said. "I already delivered what I came to deliver." Evelyn studied him. Beneath the showroom lights, he looked older than 42 and younger than tiredness should have allowed. There was rain on his shoulders, oil under his nails, and a steadiness in his eyes that did not belong to a man begging for permission. It belonged to someone who had made peace with being underestimated. 2 hours earlier, Caleb had been across town at Mercer and Sons Towing, though there were no sons, no brothers, no family name left on the door except his own. The office smelled of burnt coffee, rubber mats, and winter damp. A small space heater clicked near the desk. On the wall hung a crayon drawing of a blue car with angel wings, signed in careful purple letters by Lily Mercer. His daughter had taped it there herself and told him every shop needed something beautiful. At 7:30, she had sat on an overturned tire eating macaroni from a plastic container while Caleb finished a brake job on a minivan. "Daddy," she asked, swinging her sneakers above the concrete floor, "why do people bring you cars nobody else wants?" Caleb smiled without looking up. "Because cars do not know when people have given up on them." "Is that why you fix them?" He paused. The wrench in his hand grew still. "Sometimes." Lily looked toward the locked drawer beneath his workbench, the one that held his old badge, a cracked photograph of her mother, and papers from a life Caleb no longer explained. "Did Mommy fix cars like you?" Caleb swallowed gently. "Your mom built things that were supposed to outlive us." "Then why do you hide her notebook?" The question hung in the garage, soft but heavy. Outside, a tow truck passed, its amber lights sweeping across the windows like a memory. Caleb closed the hood of the minivan and walked to her, kneeling until they were eye to eye. "Because some engines remind you of people you could not save," he said. Lily touched his sleeve with small, careful fingers. "Maybe they are not reminding you to be sad. Maybe they are asking you to listen again." Now, standing in Evelyn Hartwell's showroom, Caleb heard those words come back through the hum of luxury lights and expensive panic. Evelyn had not moved. Derek was still waiting for her to dismiss him. Grant was still watching too closely. Caleb reached for the empty cardboard box, ready to leave with his dignity intact. Then Evelyn said, "Mr. Mercer, if you had 10 minutes with it, what would you check first?" Derek's smile vanished. Caleb looked at the engine once more, then at the CEO who had finally asked the right question. "I would check who lied to it," he said. Evelyn gave Caleb 10 minutes, and the room treated it like a final insult before failure. Derek checked his watch as if every second belonged to him. Grant crossed his arms, though his eyes stayed on Caleb's hands. The investors upstairs were waiting behind frosted glass, sipping bottled water and pretending not to hear the whispers spreading through the building. 9 o'clock was less than 12 hours away, and Hartwell Motors had placed its future beneath the open hood of a car that would not breathe. 10 minutes, Evelyn said. "No more." Caleb nodded once. "That is enough to know where the truth starts." Derek scoffed. "Truth? It is an engine, not a courtroom." Caleb did not look at him. "Machines testify better than people. They do not care who signs the paycheck." A soft murmur moved through the technicians. Evelyn's expression did not change, but something in her eyes sharpened. Caleb leaned over the engine bay, not rushing, not performing. He asked for a flashlight, a clean rag, and access to the basic scan display. Derek almost refused until Evelyn turned her head toward him. One look was enough. The scan tablet was placed in Caleb's hand. He did not scroll like a man searching blindly. He moved through the readings slowly, listening between numbers. Fuel pressure. Battery temperature. Timing variation. Injector delay. Airflow correction. Each value looked close enough to pass. That was the problem. Lies often did. "Everything is within tolerance," Grant said, his voice careful. "That is why we ruled out calibration." Caleb tapped the screen once. "Within tolerance at idle. Not under transition. You cannot know that without a full load test." Caleb pointed to the coffee cup near the workbench. The dark surface trembled in a tiny uneven rhythm. It tells you the mount is compensating late. The computer is correcting after the mistake instead of before it. Derek laughed, but it came out thinner this time. You diagnosed a $3 million prototype with a cup of coffee. Caleb finally turned. No. I diagnosed your confidence with it. The room went quiet enough to hear rain ticking against the windows. Evelyn stepped closer. What would cause that? Caleb looked back at the screen. A fuel map update pushed into the control module without matching the pressure curve. The system thinks it is protecting the engine, but every correction steals a breath from the next cycle. Grant's mouth opened, then closed. He glanced toward Derek. It was small, almost nothing, but Caleb saw it. Evelyn saw it too. Derek's jaw tightened. That is speculation. Caleb removed the rag from his pocket and wiped a thin black smudge from the edge of a sensor housing. He held it up beneath the light. This is not. That carbon pattern forms when the mixture leans out during a warm restart. Not once. Repeatedly. Evelyn's voice lowered. Could it be fixed before morning? Caleb looked at the car, then toward the rain-dark windows where his reflection stood between polished luxury and old exhaustion. He thought of Lily eating macaroni on a tire. He thought of the locked drawer. He thought of a notebook written in his wife's careful hand. Maybe, he said. Derek stepped forward quickly. Miss Hartwell, this is reckless. Caleb's voice stayed quiet. Reckless was pretending the warning signs were background noise. Grant looked down. Derek went still. Evelyn turned fully toward Caleb. What do you need? He did not ask for money. He did not ask for credit. He did not even ask them to believe him. A scan tool that is not locked by management permissions, Caleb said. A clean power supply. Access to the update history. And one night without anyone lying to the car. The word settled over the showroom like a verdict. Evelyn reached into her coat, removed her black access card, and placed it on the edge of the engine bay. Derek stared at it as if she had handed over the company itself. Caleb looked at the card, then at her. You understand what I may find. Evelyn held his gaze. I am beginning to think that is exactly why everyone is nervous. Derek Sloan followed Evelyn before Caleb could even pick up the access card. You cannot be serious, he said, keeping his voice low enough for the investors not to hear and sharp enough for everyone else to feel. That prototype is insured under strict handling rules. If an uncertified outside mechanic touches the control system, we could lose coverage, compliance, everything. Evelyn stopped beside the service hallway, where the showroom brightness faded into colder shop light. Then why did your certified team miss a failing calibration? Derek's face tightened. They did not miss it. There is no failing calibration. Caleb says there is. Caleb delivers parts. That sentence hung there, polished and cruel. Across the room, Caleb stood beside the Orion X with his hands folded around the access card, not using it yet, not celebrating it, not even looking at Derek. That bothered Derek most of all. A man with pride could be provoked. A man with quiet dignity had to be feared, because he did not move unless there was something worth moving for. Grant Whitaker cleared his throat. Miss Hartwell, I do not like admitting this, but Mr. Mercer noticed a vibration pattern we should have tested. The late correction is possible. Derek turned on him. Grant, do not help him invent a ghost. Grant's voice stayed weary. I have spent 30 years with engines. Sometimes the ghost is just the thing we were too arrogant to see. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping the glass like impatient fingers. Evelyn looked back at the prototype, then at the investors watching from above. $900 million waited behind those windows. So did headlines. So did the jobs of thousands of people who had never met her, but whose mortgages, college funds, and grocery bills depended on decisions made in rooms like this. She turned to Caleb. If I give you the shop tonight, can you tell me by sunrise whether it can run? Caleb placed the access card gently on the workbench. I can tell you the truth by sunrise. Running is up to what the truth costs. Derek laughed once, too loudly. That sounds like a man preparing an excuse. Caleb looked at him. No. It sounds like a man who has seen what excuses do. Evelyn stepped closer. What do you need besides access? A clean wall outlet, not an extension cord running through 3 adapters. The master scan tablet with update history unlocked. A battery conditioner rated for this pack. 2 gallons of coffee, if your break room can spare it. And nobody touching the car unless I ask. Derek shook his head. Absolutely not. Evelyn reached into her coat again, removed a second card, silver along the edge, and handed it to Caleb. This opens the engineering server for diagnostic logs only. The room drew in a breath. Derek's eyes changed, not with anger this time, but with fear wearing a suit. Caleb noticed. He always noticed when a person became louder right before the truth arrived. Thank you, Caleb said. Do not thank me yet, Evelyn replied. If you damage my car, I will hold you responsible. Caleb nodded. That is fair. And if you save it? He looked through the glass toward the showroom, where people who had laughed at him were now pretending they had not. Then maybe tomorrow your people will remember that respect should not depend on a badge. Evelyn held his gaze a second longer than business required. Then she turned to the room. Clear the shop. Derek stepped toward her. Miss Hartwell. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. Clear it. One by one, technicians rolled carts aside, gathered tablets, and backed away from the prototype as if leaving a sleeping patient with the only doctor still listening. Grant paused near Caleb and set down a narrow torque wrench. This one is calibrated, he said quietly. Caleb accepted it with a nod. No speech. No victory. Just grace. As the last employees left, Derek remained by the service doors, his hand resting near his phone. Caleb saw the reflection in the black paint of the car. Evelyn saw Caleb seeing it. Mr. Sloan, she said, go home. Derek smiled without warmth. Of course. But as he walked away, his phone screen lit against his palm, and for the first time that night, Caleb understood the engine was not the only thing in that building being forced to lie. The shop emptied until the building sounded bigger than it was. Fluorescent lights hummed above Caleb Mercer, pale and restless, while rain whispered against the service bay doors. The Orion X sat in the center of the floor with its hood open, no longer a showpiece beneath banners and glass, but a wounded machine under honest light. Caleb rolled up his sleeves, set Grant's calibrated torque wrench beside the scan tablet, and plugged the battery conditioner into a clean wall outlet. No applause. No audience. Just metal, memory, and the kind of silence where truth either rises or stays buried. He started with the simple things because simple things were where proud people most often failed. Ground strap resistance. Coolant temperature variance. Fuel rail pressure. Software handshake timing. He wrote each reading in a small spiral notebook with a purple sticker on the cover, the one Lily had placed there because, she told him, every serious notebook needed one brave color. At 10:58, his phone buzzed. Lily's face appeared on the screen, sleepy-eyed beneath a blanket printed with little stars. Are you still at the fancy car place? She asked. Caleb smiled softly. I am. Did they fix it? Not yet. Did you? He looked at the engine. I am listening. She shifted the phone, and for a second he saw the edge of an old leather notebook on her bed. His smile faded. Lily, why do you have your mom's notebook? She looked guilty for half a breath, then brave. Because I wanted to understand her drawings. Caleb closed his eyes. The service bay smelled of warm plastic, oil, and old rain drying on concrete. That notebook is fragile, sweetheart. So are people, she said. But you still fix them when they are broken. The words landed quietly, with grace he was not ready for. She opened the notebook and held it near the camera. The pages were filled with Mara Mercer's handwriting, careful and slanted, wrapped around sketches of flow charts, pressure curves, and hybrid transition maps. Lily ran one finger across a sentence. Mom wrote, "Engines have memories. They remember every bad rhythm forced into them." Caleb swallowed. She used to say that when a system kept failing, you should stop asking what broke and start asking what it was taught to survive. "Daddy," Lily whispered, "is that car one of hers?" Caleb looked back at the scan tablet. A diagnostic file had finally opened under Evelyn's silver access card. Buried beneath layers of corporate naming and updated security labels was an old architecture tag, almost erased but not quite. Drive Logic, Revision 2.7. His hand went still. The pass did not arrive with thunder. It arrived as 3 letters on a screen. Mara Mercer. For years, Caleb had locked that part of his life away in a drawer under a workbench, believing grief was easier if it stayed unspoken. But here it was, breathing through wires and code inside a car worth more money than his whole neighborhood, carrying a piece of the woman Lily barely remembered. "Daddy?" Lily asked. Caleb touched the edge of the tablet as if it might vanish. "Yes," he said, voice rough but steady. "Part of it is hers." Lily did not cry. She only nodded with the solemn wisdom of a child who had learned early that love could live inside ordinary objects. "Then listen twice," she said. "Like she told you." Caleb set the phone upright against a toolbox so she could stay with him while he worked. Midnight passed. Then 1. Then 2. The building settled around him. He traced the update history line by line and found the wound, a management override pushed 3 weeks earlier, forcing a faster fuel transition to impress investors during demonstration mode. It made the car feel sharper for the first few seconds, but underneath, it taught the engine to starve itself every time it tried to protect itself. Caleb leaned back, tired eyes reflecting the red glow of the warning screen. He was not looking at a malfunction anymore. He was looking at a lie with a timestamp. And beside that timestamp was Derek Sloan's authorization code. Caleb stared at Derek Sloan's authorization code until the red glow of the screen blurred into something older. Not anger. Not even surprise. Just the familiar ache of watching powerful men rename carelessness as leadership and then ask quiet people to carry the cost. Lily had fallen asleep on the video call, her cheek pressed against her pillow, her mother's notebook still open beside her. Caleb lowered the phone volume but did not hang up. Somehow, hearing her breathe through the speaker kept the past from swallowing the room. He opened the deeper architecture file and found the original framework beneath years of corporate revisions. There it was again, the pattern he knew before he saw the name, a gentle ramp between electric torque and fuel compression, a transition curve shaped not for speed, but for mercy. Mara had designed machines the way she loved people, believing strength should never arrive as shock when it could arrive as grace. 12 years earlier, Caleb and Mara Mercer had worked in a rented lab outside Detroit with a cracked concrete floor, 2 folding tables, and a coffee maker that sounded worse than most engines. They were young then, brilliant and broke, raising a baby in shifts and chasing a dream that made no promises. Engineers from larger companies laughed at their idea. Investors called it sentimental. One executive told them, "Cars do not need feelings." Mara had smiled and answered, "No, but people do, and people drive them." Caleb used to watch her write equations with Lily asleep in a carrier beside the desk, one tiny hand curled around the edge of Mara's sleeve. He would test the hardware. She would tune the logic. Together, they became known by a nickname whispered in small engineering circles, the Heartbeat Team. Their system did not just manage power. It listened, adjusted, softened the moment between strain and response. It made a hybrid engine feel alive without forcing it to perform beyond its dignity. Then came the trial run that ended everything. A supplier hit a defective pressure regulator. A senior partner ignored Caleb's warning because a demonstration had already been scheduled. When the system failed under public pressure, the company needed a name to bury with the headlines. Mara was gone. Caleb was grieving. Lily was still small enough to ask when Mommy was coming home. So Caleb signed the settlement, accepted silence in exchange for medical bills, funeral costs, and enough money to keep a roof over his daughter. The official records called him unstable, emotional, unreliable. The industry moved on. Heartfelt Motors later purchased the dormant technology through a chain of acquisitions, cleaned the paperwork, renamed the system, and forgot the hands that had first taught it to breathe. But machines remember. At 2:41 in the morning, inside the Heartfelt service bay, the Orion X still carried Mara's kindness beneath Derek's override. Caleb leaned closer to the screen and traced the corrupted update. Derek had not invented anything. He had simply forced the old system to perform faster than it was designed to perform, then blamed the engine when it resisted. "You were protecting yourself," Caleb whispered to the car. The words sounded foolish in the empty room, but they were true. The engine had not failed because it was weak. It had failed because someone demanded brilliance without respect. Caleb copied the log to the diagnostic tablet, then wrote the authorization code in Lily's notebook beneath the exact timestamp. His hand was steady now. Not because the grief was gone, but because grief had finally found a place to stand. Behind him, beyond the dark glass of the service office, a small security light blinked once, then went out. The scan tablet flickered. The server connection dropped. Caleb turned slowly toward the hallway. Somewhere in the building, a door clicked shut, soft as a lie trying not to be heard. The server connection vanished, and with it went the clean trail Caleb had spent hours uncovering. The scan tablet dimmed to a gray error screen. The diagnostic lights around the Orion X flickered once, then steadied, as if the car itself had flinched and decided not to show it. Caleb stood very still. He had learned long ago that panic was expensive. It spent breath, blurred judgment, and handed dishonest men the confusion they needed. He walked to the service office, checked the wall monitor, and found 3 camera feeds frozen at 2:47 in the morning. The hallway. The server door. The bay entrance. All still images. All too perfect. Behind him, Lily stirred on the phone. "Daddy?" Her voice was small and thick with sleep. Caleb softened immediately. "I am here, sweetheart." Did the car get quiet? He looked toward the dark hallway. For a minute. "Are you scared?" Caleb picked up the phone and saw her face half hidden under the star blanket. He wanted to say no because fathers often mistake comfort for hiding the truth. But dignity had never meant pretending. "A little," he said. "But scared is not the same as lost." Lily blinked, then nodded as if filing that away for a future day when she might need it. "Mom would write it down." Caleb smiled faintly. "Then we will." He returned to the workbench and began writing by hand. Time of server loss. Camera freeze. Diagnostic state before interruption. Derek Sloan authorization code. Fuel map override. Every detail went into Lily's purple sticker notebook, each line careful, plain, and impossible to intimidate. At 3:12, the service doors opened, and Derek entered with 2 security staff members behind him. He wore a fresh coat and the pleased expression of a man arriving to inspect damage he already understood. "Mr. Mercer," Derek said, "step away from the vehicle." Caleb capped the pen. "Good morning, Derek. Do not make this harder." "I am not the one who made it hard." Derek looked at the frozen tablet and shook his head with practiced disappointment. "The engineering server logged a forced access failure under the card you were given. Cameras went down. The diagnostic system crashed. Do you understand how serious this looks? Caleb looked past him to the silent security staff, then back to Derek. It looks exactly the way you arranged it to look. Derek's smile thinned. Careful. You are a tow-yard mechanic standing next to a damaged prototype with stolen access credentials. Borrowed credentials, Caleb said. From your CEO. And abused by you. The words were neat, polished, ready for a report. That was how men like Derek built cages, not with bars, but with language. Grant Whitaker arrived moments later, pulling his coat over a wrinkled shirt, his hair flattened on one side from sleep. Evelyn came in behind him, calm but pale, her eyes moving from the dead monitor to Caleb's notebook to Derek's face. Explain, she said. Derek stepped forward before anyone else could breathe. He accessed restricted files, crashed the server, and possibly compromised the prototype. I warned everyone this would happen. Grant stared at Caleb, disappointment and uncertainty fighting in his tired eyes. Evelyn said nothing. Caleb did not raise his voice. He did not beg. He did not perform innocence for people who had already enjoyed doubting him. He simply opened Lily's notebook and placed it on the workbench. Before the server dropped, he said, I wrote down what it showed. Derek laughed. A child's notebook will not save you. Caleb looked at the phone still propped against the toolbox. Lily was awake now, watching with wide eyes. The camera light was on. It had been on all night. Evelyn followed Caleb's gaze. Derek did too, and for the first time, his confidence lost its rhythm. Caleb touched the phone gently. No, he said. But the truth might. For one long second, no one moved. The shop lights hummed over the Orion X, the rain softened against the service doors, and the phone on the toolbox glowed with Lily Mercer's sleepy face. Evelyn stepped closer to it. Lily, she said gently, her voice changing in a way no boardroom had ever heard, has your video been recording the whole night? Lily looked at her father first, then at the woman in the charcoal coat. I did not mean to. I was showing Daddy Mom's notebook, and then I fell asleep. Derek laughed too quickly. A child accidentally recording a bedtime call proves nothing. Caleb did not answer. He tapped the screen, opened the saved call file, and slid the phone toward Evelyn. The video was not perfect. The angle was low, half blocked by a socket tray and the curved fender of the car. But it showed enough. At 2:46 in the morning, the service hallway light changed. A man in a dark coat entered the server office. His face was not clear at first, only his shape, his watch, the silver dealership ring on his right hand, the same ring Derek was wearing now. Then came the reflection in the black paint of the Orion X, sharp as a confession. Derek Sloan. No one spoke. Not Grant. Not the security staff. Not Evelyn. The silence did what shouting never could. It made the truth stand taller. Derek's face drained, then hardened. That proves I entered my own server room. Caleb picked up Lily's notebook and turned it toward Evelyn. And this shows what disappeared right after. Evelyn read the handwritten timestamp, the fuel map override, the authorization code, the pressure mismatch, the correction delay. Grant leaned over her shoulder, and the more he read, the less he looked like a man protecting his reputation and the more he looked like a man meeting responsibility at sunrise. This is real, Grant said quietly. The override would create exactly what Caleb described. Evelyn looked at Derek. You pushed an untested update. For performance optics, Derek said, panic slipping through his polish. The investors wanted a sharper response. Everyone knew the timeline. Did everyone know you ignored the warning flags? Caleb asked. Derek turned on him. You think you are noble because you write things down in a little notebook. Caleb's voice stayed low. No. I write things down because people like you count on the poor having no record. The words settled in the room with quiet dignity. Evelyn handed the phone to one of the security staff members. "Preserve that file." Then she turned to Caleb. "Can you still make it run?" Caleb looked at the clock. 6:38. Less than 3 hours until the press demonstration. The server was down, the system was unstable, and the car carried both his wife's old Grace and Derek's new lie inside the same wounded code. "Yes," he said. "But I need Grant." Grant blinked. "Me? You know what your team changed after the acquisition. I know what Mara built before it." Grant looked at the old notebook, then at the machine. Pride wrestled with humility in his face, and humility finally won. "Tell me where to start." Together, they worked as the morning gathered beyond the rain-streaked glass. Caleb restored the original transition curve by hand, not to make the car dramatic, but to make it honest. Grant recalibrated the pressure sensors. Evelyn stood nearby, not interfering, watching two men repair more than an engine. Derek stood silent near the wall, already smaller than his title had made him. At 8:55, the investors lined the showroom. Cameras waited. Employees crowded behind the glass. Caleb closed the hood and placed one hand on it, not as a mechanic claiming victory, but as a widower touching the edge of a memory. Evelyn held the key fob. "Are you sure?" she asked. Caleb glanced at Lily's face on the phone, then at the code glowing steady on the dashboard. "I am not sure about many things," he said. "But Mara was sure about this." Evelyn pressed the start button. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the Orion X breathed in, turned over, and came alive so smoothly that the whole building went silent. The sound of the Orion X was not loud. That was what made it beautiful. It did not roar to impress the room or shake the glass to prove a point. It settled into a clean, steady rhythm, smooth as breath after a long illness, and every person in the showroom seemed to understand at the same time that they were hearing more than an engine. They were hearing a truth return to its rightful name. The dashboard glowed blue. The warning lights disappeared one by one. Then, across the center display, a system label appeared that had not been seen inside Heartfelt Motors for years: Mercer Mara Drive Logic, Stable. Grant Whitaker removed his glasses. His eyes stayed on the screen as if the words had humbled him before Caleb ever could. "I was wrong," he said quietly. Caleb nodded, not with triumph, but with the grace of a man who had never needed another man's shame in order to stand taller. Evelyn Hartwell stepped into the showroom, where investors, employees, and cameras waited for a polished announcement. Instead, she gave them an honest one. "Before any demonstration begins," she said, "this company owes a debt." The room shifted. Derek Sloan stood near the service doors between two security staff members, his face pale, his title already leaving him though no one had spoken it aloud. Evelyn held up Lily's notebook in one hand and the recovered diagnostic tablet in the other. This vehicle was not saved by pressure, ego, or a rushed deadline. It was saved by patience, truth, and a man most of us failed to respect. No one laughed now. Not the salesman who had smirked. Not the technicians who had looked away. Not the investors who had mistaken silence for lack of value. Evelyn turned toward Caleb. "Caleb Mercer did not just repair our prototype overnight. He restored the foundation of a system first built by him and his late wife, Mara Mercer, whose work should have been honored long before today." Caleb lowered his eyes for a moment. On the phone, Lily was fully awake now, watching with both hands over her mouth. Evelyn continued, her voice steady but warmer than before. "Heartfelt Motors will correct the record. The technology will carry the Mercer name publicly. Mr. Sloan's actions will be reviewed formally. And Mr. Mercer, if he accepts, will lead the restoration and integrity division of this company, with full authority to protect the engineering his family began." The offer filled the room, but Caleb did not reach for it right away. He walked to the workbench and picked up the phone. "Did you hear that, sweetheart?" Lily nodded, tears bright in her eyes. "Mommy's name is on the car." Caleb smiled, and the years seemed to loosen their grip on his shoulders. Yes, he whispered. Where it belongs. Evelyn approached him, no longer as a CEO rescuing a crisis, but as a person learning the weight of respect. Will you take the position? She asked. Caleb looked through the showroom windows at the bright morning beyond the rain. He thought of the towing yard, the unpaid bills, the locked drawer, the nights Lily ate dinner beside a space heater while he fixed cars people had abandoned. Then he looked at the people who had laughed at him only hours before. I do not need the world to call me a genius, he said. I need my daughter to grow up in a place where kindness is not treated like weakness, and quiet people are not mistaken for empty ones. Evelyn nodded slowly. Then help me build that place. This time, Caleb accepted her hand. Not because money had finally found him. Not because power had finally approved him. But because truth had opened a door, and dignity had allowed him to walk through it without bitterness. A few minutes later, the Orion X rolled forward under its own power, smooth and silent beneath the showroom lights. No one clapped at first. They simply watched. Sometimes justice does not arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrives as a steady engine, a child's notebook, a widow's name restored, and a single father standing quietly where everyone can finally see him.